Hi everyone, so glad that you tuned in for this short video on availability. Lately I see so many articles that are about like, how do I find a man? Where do I date guys? How do I find a partner? How do I date? All this stuff about dating. But I really think that if you are a woman who is looking for a long-term relationship, the question is not so much about where to find a man or how to find a man, as it is about whether or not the man's available. So why does availability matter? Availability matters because you don't want to waste your time going on 10 or 15 dates only to discover 2 or 3 months in that the guy you're dating is not emotionally available or emotionally ready to be a partner to you. That's a waste of your time. You're so, like, women today, we're so busy. We have businesses to run, we have workouts to do, we have wines to taste, we have food to eat. I mean, there's so many things going on in life that it really makes no sense to be wasting our time dating people who aren't available, especially when we know that we're ready for a long-term sustainable partnership. So that is why availability matters. It matters because you don't want to be wasting your time, and not to mention the cost of going out on dates, just like all of the stuff that goes along with dating, only to find that you've got a partner that you're interested in, but he isn't available to be fully intimate in a relationship with you. So there are 3 really big ways to tell if someone is not available. The first and foremost way to tell that someone is not available is if they are currently getting divorced, if they are separated, or if they are just finalizing their divorce. I can guarantee you, I have dated enough of these guys, my friends have dated enough of these guys, you've probably dated enough of these guys, your friends have probably dated enough of these guys to know that anyone that's getting divorced is not available for a deeply intimate, long-term relationship on the day that they sign their divorce paperwork. So I think it's a story that a lot of women tell themselves, oh, well, he's in the process of getting divorced. Oh, they're separated right now. Oh, he says he wants something different. She was just not the right fit for him. I am telling you, you will also not be the right fit for him. Because anyone that's getting divorced, male or female, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're getting divorced, you need some time to do some work on what got your ass divorced before you get involved with someone else. So I always say a hard and fast rule for me, and that I always tell my girlfriends, is that if he's divorced, he needs to have been out of his relationship for at least 9 months. And that is like a hard and fast rule for me, because that is enough time to give someone some space to like let the dust settle from the divorce or the breakup or whatever, to maybe do some therapy around whatever kind of issues they have from it, if they have any trauma around it, and then to become ready to get back in the dating game and try to find an available partner. So number 1 rule is if they are currently separated, if they are going through a divorce, if they are just divorced last week, they're not available. So move on to the next. The second rule around availability is related to geography. So the internet makes it so easy to meet people who don't live where you live. And it can be so much fun when we're like casually dating to like go fly to Las Vegas to rendezvous with someone, or to go meet them in Boston, or to go hang out with them in like Chicago, right? Because you swoop into their lives, you go see all the sights together, you eat dinner out every night. Like, it's exciting and it's fun. And I think that that is such a fun way to date. So I don't have any problem with that. But the reality is that if you are looking for someone to be in a long-term relationship with, we don't date long distance off the bat. So people who end up dating long distance are generally people who have been in a loving, committed, long-term relationship prior to some kind of external stimulus that requires that they be apart for a while. Like maybe it's a sick relative, maybe it's a job relocation. So there's usually something outside of that, outside of their partnership, that requires the relocation of one of the partners. It is very rare for a relationship that starts long distance to end up being a successful relationship, even once the person moves to the other person's location. And the reason why is that when we like fly in and out of someone's lives and we get to like live in this fantasy world of vacations all the time, we're not really like doing the mundane tasks of like going to the grocery store, trying to figure out what we're having for dinner at the house, paying your bills, like any of the regular stresses of life that we kind of go through, and that in early stages of coupledom and more advanced stages of coupledom we do together. We don't get those opportunities when we're just swooping in and out of someone's life. So when we date long distance from the start, it's kind of like, I guess the best metaphor for me around it is, it's like eating Snickers bars and whipped cream all the time, and then expecting that you're gonna have a bodybuilder physique. So like a truly intimate and long-term sustainable relationship can't be built on just the swooping in, the fantasy, the text messages, the long distance stuff. Like that just doesn't cut it. You have to have a more substantial interaction on the daily in order for a long-term, in order to have this sustainable and long-term relationship. And doing something like that long distance just really rarely works. So I would say this is a second hard and fast rule for me. If this guy lives more than 30 minutes outside of your purview, he's not available. You got to move on to the next. And the third way that we can tell someone is not available has to do with emotional availability. So emotional availability means that the person that you're dating is grown up enough to know that they might have some baggage and that they've done some work around it and they don't bring it to you. So this is like a good example. Emotional availability can be tricky to identify, but emotional unavailability is actually quite simple to see. So if you're on a first date with a guy and he is telling you all about how much, if he starts telling you about, sorry, I just lost track, but I'm back on track. You're on a first date with a guy. He starts to tell you about his mom. He tells you about how his dad left him when he was 5. He tells you about how his mom remarried when he was 7, and then spends the next 30 minutes telling you about how his stepdad was a complete a-hole. And he's 45. This guy has some emotional baggage and he's not emotionally available. So what that guy is doing in that scenario that I outlined for you, that's actually a manipulation. So there is, so many people these days are talking about vulnerability. It's such a big buzzword. A lot of people have seen the Brene Brown special on vulnerability. It's important, but I truly believe that there is such a thing as inappropriate vulnerability. And that's when I've done this myself back in the day when I was dating a long time ago in my 20s. I would start to talk to somebody and I would inevitably find that I was sharing my entire life story with them, any of the trauma that I had suffered to that point, all of the story, anything just to get them to give me their attention. And it turns out that's actually being really inappropriate with my vulnerability, and the simplest word for that is that it's being manipulative. So if you are talking to a guy and you're in the early stages of dating and he starts kind of unpacking all this baggage for you and there's a lot of really intense emotion around it, I'm telling you that means he's not emotionally available. He's got some work to do. So here's the thing about people who aren't emotionally available. Everyone in this lifetime is worthy of love and commitment and relationship. I truly believe that. But people who are emotionally unavailable will not be able to be present in the relationship and show up for you in the same way that you can show up for them. And so while worthy of love and worthy of the journey, they're just not ready to be on it with you yet. So if you are interested in someone and you think they're emotionally unavailable, you may say to them, you may have to kind of cut your ties, right? And say I don't think this is going to work out right now. And if they go and do some work on themselves and do some work around whatever kind of emotional baggage it is that has them with this block, they may come back to you in a year and a half, 2 years and say oh my God, in that time, I've done all this work and I discovered all these things about who I am and why I am the way that I am. And would you like to give us another shot? So I really always feel like if we can have some grace and compassion about the way that we move through dating someone who's emotionally unavailable, we just never know whether the universe will bring them back around into our purview. And we're much better off kind of letting that person go, giving them the space to be on their journey and giving them the space to come back to us instead of strangling them and trying to strangling them. That looked very clearly like I was trying to strangle someone. What I mean is holding on tight to something that's not right for us and trying to fix it. And I do have one last thing to say about emotional unavailability as it pertains to substances. So if you are a person who uses alcohol and drugs like a normal person, it doesn't cause you any major consequences. That would be kind of how I would define drinking and drugs as a normal person. And you are dating someone and you think that their use of substances is inappropriate or maybe abusive in some way, then I would trust your gut on that and go ahead and move on to the next person. Because a lot of times someone that is in the depths of alcohol abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction will certainly be very emotional, but will not be emotionally available. And it really won't be up to you to make that happen for them, to create emotional availability for them. It's a journey that everyone has to take for themselves. So thank you so much for tuning in to this little video on emotional availability. It was such a pleasure to share my thoughts on the topic with you. I can't wait to talk to you further about whatever it is that you have going on. Feel free to email me at heidi@heidibcoaching.com. Send me a message on Instagram. I'm honeybee52. Shoot me a message on Facebook. I would just love to talk to you about whatever it is that's going on with you in your relationships, and I look forward to doing an entire series of videos, so keep your eye out for those too.